The Bugatti 100p, the most beautiful aircraft to never fly. Why was this the case, what went wrong, and how did it end up where it is today? We need to start from the beginning. It's the 1930s, and Ettore Bugatti has shown the world that he can build some of the fastest cars, winning over 2,000 races. Ettore now looks to the clouds and begins to play with the idea of building an aircraft. The aircraft designed alongside Bugatti's chief engineer Louis Demange would be called the Bugatti 100p. The 100p was an aircraft that featured smooth, uninterrupted lines and a monocoque fuselage, allowing for an optimum aerodynamic shape. The structure of the aircraft was a sandwich construction, in which layers of balsa wood are glued together and carved to achieve the desired aerodynamic shape. The airframe was then covered with tulip wood strips, linen, and lacquer coating to enhance aerodynamic attributes. The wing spar can only go between the engines, so the wings have a forward sweep to maintain a positive center of gravity. The wing is then blended into the fuselage to minimize drag. The engines that powered the aircraft were Bugatti Type 50B race engines. They are 8 cylinders, 4.7 liters, with a root-style blower. This combination created 450 horsepower per engine. The engines were then placed in an interesting fashion, where one sat in front of the other, along with the rear engine sitting at an angle. While designing the aircraft, cooling was a point of contention, but the solution was genius. Bugatti and Demange ended up using the tail of the aircraft to suck in air and cool the engines. They also used the trailing edge of the wings to vent the engines and get rid of the heat accumulating inside without the use of fans. The front engine was configured in the typical fashion. It's interesting to note that the engine's prop shaft turned counterclockwise because it had an offset gear changing the direction the prop shaft rotated. The rear engine had the intake and exhaust sides switched, but with standard rotation, along with driving the prop shaft directly. Switching the side of the intake and exhaust made it so an exhaust port could be mounted on each side of the fuselage, creating space so a prop shaft could run behind the front engine. Power was then transferred to the props with thin-wall tubes and universal joints made of leather. The props were contra-rotating or spinning in opposite directions to eliminate torque reaction. Surprisingly, the front engine drives the rear prop, and the rear engine powers the front prop, along with the gearbox being made of magnesium. When all this engineering came together, it created something beautiful and groundbreaking for its time, with a designed max speed of 500 to 550 miles per hour, along with both engines working together in harmony to produce over 900 horsepower. The 100p was extremely light, at only 3,086 pounds. It was also quite small, being only 25.5 feet long, with a wingspan of 27 feet. What happened to this aircraft? It looked like a success. Development was stopped on June 24, 1940, when Nazi Germany invaded Paris. The aircraft was dismantled and taken to Bugatti's estate north of Paris and hidden away in a service barn, where Germany was unsuccessful in finding it. During World War II, Bugatti returned to his earlier work on automobiles and bicycles, but did not work on any aircraft. Louis Demange also abandoned aircraft work at this time. After World War II, Ettore Bugatti died on the 21st of August, 1947, before the 100p was completed. The 100p sat for years until it was sold to Serge Perzoli in 1960, where he made no attempt to restore it, but offered it to museums in France, which declined. In 1970, American Ray Jones bought the aircraft for $18,000 plus $10,000 for crating and then shipping it to Detroit. The engines were removed before it was crated, and they are now in England being used in Bugatti racing cars. In 1971, Ray Jones sold the airframe for $6,000 to Dr. Peter Williamson, who was an avid classic Bugatti car collector. Dr. Williamson then financed the restoration effort begun by Vintage Auto Restorations in Ridgefield, Connecticut. Louis Demange was also involved in restoration efforts to a small degree. He saw the aircraft during its restoration and became emotional because he thought that it had been lost to time. Louis Demange died on the 25th of July, 1977, before the restoration was completed. Then, in 1979, the unfinished 100p was donated to the United States Air Force Museum Foundation in hopes they would complete the restoration. The 100p sat until 1996, when it was donated to the EAA in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, where it was restored to its current condition. Now, the Bugatti 100p is on display at the EAA Museum without its engines, but with an incredible story to share for present and future generations.